My short film is a drama with a slightly sci-fi twist. It follows the story of James and eventually reveals both his current and future personalities. I knew I needed a clever plot, and possibly a twist somewhere in the 5 minutes, because it's a massively popular convention of short films. This could be the case because they're often made on a low budget, so need a USP to grip the audience and make the film an exception. Once I had the basic plan for my film, I was able to start embellishing the story. I want to start with a young character and show how he is slowly being punished for his good nature. From this, I add in the future aspect of the same character, but 30 years on. The two characters then met, and the audience gets to see how the constant generous lifestyle, without any reward, has led the character to a more selfish way of life in the future. I feel like my film fits nicely with the conventions of a drama film, but less so for a sci-fi film. I've made the mood of my film suitably dark and haunting to fit in with the drama conventions of a conflict and resolution, but I've left a lot of ambiguity for the time travel aspect. I haven't explained the theory behind the time travel aspect, as I thought it would shift the balance of genre towards sci-fi, and away from the drama, which is not my intention. The conventions of a drama film are as follows: a clever or surprising plot, a theme based around conflict and resolution, and emotionally investing characters. I decided to use some of these conventions, and add in a few sci-fi conventions as well. My final idea is basically a drama film with a technological advance, which changes the character's life. I wanted to have the time travel idea, but also wanted to keep the sci-fi side very vague and understated. This meant it was a feature of my film, but was used as more of a vehicle for the drama side, rather than a new direction for the plot to follow, which is why I would class my film as a drama with a sci-fi element. I decided I needed to create a comforting situation at the beginning of a film, where the young, likeable character is sitting and peacefully eating his lunch. I wanted to create a juxtaposition between his good-natured sequence and a slightly more haunting scene where the audience realises the character they have started to relate to isn't controlling his life. I decided to show this through a slightly motion-blurred sequence where his day-to-day life is being repeated and gradually spirals out of his control. To fit in with the conventions of a drama film, I needed to give the character a solution to his growing problem. This came in the form of his future self. The two characters had a conversation, and the younger character was given a choice between good and bad. I wanted to give the audience an antagonist to create a contrast between the good personality and the evil personality. This meant that the likability of the younger character is accentuated, and his situation made even more depressing. I followed a fairly conventional structure in terms of the drama side of my film. I conformed to the conventions of there being a clear problem that must be resolved by the main character. I also signposted the audience throughout to give them an idea of where the plot might lead next. This is a feature of drama films that makes a plot smoother and the story less complicated. I did this through the repetitive sequence which shows the audience the beginning of the character's problems. The music is also a good signpost, as it begins to get darker and more intense as the film goes on, to exaggerate this effect. This is a common convention of modern dramas. The sci-fi side of my film was difficult to balance. I knew I wanted a time travel theme, but didn't know exactly how to introduce it without explaining it fully. I went through a few ideas about the future character describing the future and saying that the time machine is a basic piece of equipment that everyone has. However, I noticed the problem, in that there will be more people in the present time visiting themselves from the future. This created a paradox, so I decided to keep it extremely vague. This worked quite well, as I realised the audience would only get the information that was revealed to them by the single conversation between the two characters. Because of this, I have conformed to almost none of the sci-fi conventions. For instance, the film isn't very action-packed, whereas sci-fi films often are. Also, many sci-fi films have a comical dialogue. This may be because sci-fi films are often aimed at young children and teenagers, so a comedy element will distract the audience from a potentially dark plot. This is shown very well through Doctor Who. Likeable characters get into dangerous situations, but the film remains light-hearted as the audience is given a hero in the form of a doctor. The audience is given comfort in the knowledge that the doctor won't fail. I had to make a decision whether I'd follow this convention or not. I decided to subvert it in the end, the reason being that I felt it would move the genre more into sci-fi, which is a route I didn't want to take. The narrative theory of my film is slightly irregular. Although it follows a fairly linear narrative, following the main character's life on a day-to-day basis, there are some scenes in the film where the narrative doesn't follow this pattern, and the main character's life seems to be rushing past. I feel this works well to show how his life is no longer in his control, and also creates a darker side of the otherwise joyful and light-hearted drama. Another section of my film that doesn't operate on a linear narrative is time travel theme. The audience has to be active to notice some of the more obtuse ideas in the film. For instance, the character from the future comes back in time to meet himself and give the key that he discarded many years ago. The audience has to notice the younger character discarding the key and link the sequence with the scene at the end, where the older character brings back a rusty, dirty key. I decided to use the key idea as a signpost, to show that the younger character and the man in his house are in fact the same person. This makes the plot a little bit more believable, as it makes a decision on letting a stranger in his house more justified. The conventions of a poster for a film in the drama genre are a colour scheme to match the mood of a film, a big main image of the characters to define them immediately, and possibly a relevant prop to use in the film. This is all shown well in the film poster for the movie Go. I decided to make my film poster very conventional of a drama film. I used a low-key colour scheme and had the characters slightly in the shadows so as to create a mysterious feel to them. I also decided I wanted both the old and the young characters in the frame. The plan of having a young character looking in the mirror and the older character looking back at him. Conventional of the thriller genre, but will also suit the drama genre as it creates a psychedelic mood. The conventions of a film review are often based on the form they're presented in. For instance, from Empire magazine they're often very witty and clever, whereas online reviews can be far more harsh, and are used to inform rather than entertain. I based mine mostly on the conventions of an Empire review. This had a massive impact on the layout. For instance, the blue arrows in the corner of the page are common for all Empire reviews. It also had a large impact on the dialogue of my review. As I said, an Empire review is often witty and clever. Because of this, I try to use a slightly humorous and sophisticated language to fit in with the other reviews of this type. But I also tried to pick up on the more obscure parts of the film that wouldn't be noticed by a normal viewer. I used this method throughout the review writing stage, and I feel it worked really well.